Welcome back to our part two of this week's Warning Track Power Hour. We're going to jump into our 2023 NFL season preview by looking at the AFC quarterbacks of the AFC West and AFC South divisions. We'll kick off by looking at the Denver Broncos. So we have three quarterbacks on the roster: Russell Wilson, Jarrett Stidham, and Ben DiNucci.
Yeah, so I think we probably have a pretty good idea what the order of all three of these quarterbacks are. Wilson, of course, is going to be the starter. He was brought in, at great expense, both in terms of draft capital, players coming and going, and also money. And he did not have a very good year last year. He's 34 this year. He'll turn 35 in late November. He was only 4-11 as the Broncos starter last year. 3,524 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. It's a career low that he had in touchdown passes. He had a high of 40 touchdowns in as recently as 2020, so 16 and 11. His passer rating was only 84.4, a lot lower than his career rating, which is over 100, 100.2. He's 108 and 64 and 1 as a starter, 308 touchdowns, 98 interceptions in his career. He was a draft pick originally and spent most of his time early on with the Seattle Seahawks, and he was drafted in the third round, number 75 overall, by Seattle in 2012. So he's been in the league for 11. This will be his 11th year, or 12th year starting. 10 in Seattle, two in Denver now. So he's he played in college at both NC State and Wisconsin. He's one of the shorter quarterbacks in the league, under 6 feet. One of the most successful quarterbacks probably ever who's under 6 feet tall. He has a 9-7 career playoff record, but only 3-5 since 2015. So he's most of his playoff success was early in his career when the Seahawks relied mostly on defense. It seems like probably the Broncos are going to try to rely mostly on defense again this year, but maybe have Wilson step up with the new Sean Payton offensive system. Do you foresee Russell Wilson being more successful this year than last year?
I think he'd almost have to be more successful than last season, but the division's just so tough. I don't know that there's that many wins to pick up to really make them, a contender for like the division. But I mean, it's possible. But I think it'll still be a better season than last year for Denver.
Were they 5-12 last year, something like that?
So,
and so, maybe
500-ish.
9-8 they could finish.
8-9, 9-8, yeah, somewhere in that.
You figure maybe you can win the two. I think people were thinking, playoffs last year for Wilson, and maybe even challenging for the division title last year, and that didn't happen. And you can blame some of it, I think, on Nathaniel Hackett, the overmatched coach who has moved to New York to be the offensive coordinator for Aaron Rodgers. But I think a lot of the problems were there anyway, and I don't know if it's personnel or just maybe Wilson is getting on the downward trend of his career. I mean, most quarterbacks, at least until very recently, did not play extremely well in their mid-30s. Even once early 30s was seen as kind of the end of a lot of careers, or mid-30s you'd be kind of the end. So, but Wilson, expected, I think, to be a very strong quarterback last year, but it didn't live up to expectations. So if he doesn't pan out, I guess they would the Broncos would turn to Jarrett Stidham as the choice. Stidham is 27, so he's 7 years younger than Wilson. He was a 4th-round pick in 2019 by the Patriots. He played for Auburn, and then he had transferred actually from Baylor in college. but he started 2 years at Auburn. He had 36 touchdowns to 11 interceptions as a quarterback at Auburn, so he did pretty well. He was early on a backup to Tom Brady and was thought he was actually going to be the starter when Brady left and went to Tampa, but Cam Newton was brought in 2020. So Stidham didn't end up playing very much. He was injured, missed most of 2021, then went to Las Vegas. Last year, he started 2 games. He had a big game against San Francisco. And he's also started against the Chiefs, so he was 1-1 as a starter. But last year, he had 656 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, and 89 quarterback rating. This is his first year with Denver. He signed I think a fairly big contract as a backup quarterback. So there's still some upside. Maybe he has some hopes of becoming a starter somewhere down the road.
It's $3 million for this season for the backup. That is the highest paid backup in the AFC West, at least anyway.
What is Wilson getting this year?
Wilson's at $22 million. Danucci is a sub $1 million, $940K.
Yeah, well, Danucci's probably making the league minimum for his. He was a 2027th round pick by Dallas. He's 26. He started at Pitt, and then he went to James Madison in 2019. He had 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,400 yards passing, almost 600 rushing yards, and 7 touchdowns. James Madison was one of the top teams in division, in the FCS division. So he played. It was a lower level of competition than he had originally when he went to Pitt. But Danucci, when he went to Dallas, he started 1 game and he played in 3 games in 2020, replacing Andy Dalton. He only has 219 career NFL passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So he's very, very little NFL experience, but some. He played for the Seattle Sea Dragons in the XFL in 2023 before joining the Broncos roster. He's from Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. Are you aware of the Pittsburgh area's very strong football tradition?
No, not at all.
So Danucci, he went to Pitt Park for a little while, but Pitt is, I think, as number 4 overall in of all colleges in terms of how many of their players turned pro and went to the Hall of Fame.
Really?
There are 10 Pitt Pro Football Hall of Famers. Jimbo Covert, Mike Ditka, Chris Dolman, Tony Dorsett. He was known as Tony Dorsett when he was in college, but when he went to Dallas and played with the Cowboys, he became Tony Dorsett, which sounds kind of cool. We had a debate earlier about what Reed Sinnett's name is pronounced. Apparently it's Sinnett, like Tony Dorsett. But Tony Dorsett, Russ Grimm, offensive lineman for the Washington Redskins for many years, Ricky Jackson, linebacker for the Saints, Dan Marino, Curtis Martin, Joe Schmidt, and Darrelle Revis. And future Hall of Famers, probably, certainly Aaron Donald, he went to Pitt, and Larry Fitzgerald also went to Pitt. So it's probably going to be up to 12. And possibly, I don't know if LaShawn McCoy is going to be a Hall of Famer, but it's surprising how many really good pro football players went to Pitt, and most of them are from a lot of them are from the Pittsburgh area.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other NFL Hall of Famers from the Pittsburgh area that didn't play for Pitt, but Joe Montana, Jason Taylor, Franco Harris, who played for the Steelers, Ty Law, who along with Ditka and Darrelle Revis went to the same high school, Aliquippa High School, and Jack Ham, Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker, who was from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So that area has like 17, 18, something like that, soon to be 20 Pro Football Hall of Famers in a very small, concentrated area. Coal mining, steel country.
Ben Danucci to join that list?
Probably not, unless Wilson and Stidham go down and Danucci somehow, becomes a Tom Brady like ascent into a starting position and then lasts for 10 or more years in the NFL. Well, maybe he could, but yeah, I don't see it happening. Sorry, Mr. Danucci. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting little tidbit about the Pittsburgh area. It's one of the historic, kind of hotbeds of NFL talent that you would recruit in like Texas or Florida or California, but also Western Pennsylvania for some reason. And coaches, for some reason, Youngstown, Ohio is a hotbed of NFL coaches or college coaches like Nick Saban and Nick Bill Belichick and like Bob Stoops and all those guys. They're all from like Youngstown, Ohio. So, which is not too far from Pittsburgh, but the Ohio side, I guess, is known for the coaching. The Pennsylvania side maybe more for the
well, I've also heard that rural West Tennessee produces some, average-ish talent, I guess, too.
I can't remember.
That's what we learned last week.
I can't remember who was that player that was that Dresser Wynn?
I think so. I think it was Dresser Wynn.
Dresser Wynn. Yeah. He's in the running for worst name quarterback in the NFL. There's maybe at least one challenger that we'll have today.
Yes.
In this division.
Yeah. One quick note before we move on from the Denver Broncos. The Russell Wilson is one of the several AFC quarterbacks that are relatively affordable this season that become much less affordable next year. Wilson's salary is at $22 million this year. He's going to make $35+ million next season. So that may be, something that, the team's going to have to deal with as they move through to the next year.
Yeah, and that numbers doesn't always count, like, signing bonuses and things like that
they could restructure.
Yeah, so he's going to be paid one way or another.
Yeah,
and he's a highly.
It will be due to him in one form or different. Yes, right.
Yeah, and Seattle gave him the big contract, I think, but they did not want to keep him around. Or did he sign it with New Denver? I can't remember if he signed it before he got there or after.
Well, he must have had some left on his deal before coming over. They may have reworked it almost immediately.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I've got his stuff here. I can look it up here in just a second. It looks like it is a new deal that he has with Denver. It looks like his Seattle deal was scheduled to end at the end of 2023.
Okay. On Wikipedia, it says he signed a 5-year, $245 million extension. So it must $165 million guaranteed. So
yeah, so they redid his 2022 season and then added 4 seasons plus. It looks like there may be 2 more even.
Yeah, it's an average of $49 million a year, but the way it's structured, it's probably balloons towards the end.
So this year 22, next year 35. 2025 would be $55.4 million cap hit, and then it's 58, 53, 54, but there is an out after 2025.
So, but it seems like if Wilson, doesn't pan out like they thought he would, the Broncos are still kind of stuck with him for 2 more years after this season. So he's still got 3 seasons in Denver, probably no matter what.
He has a dead cap number of 107, so that's how much he has left on his contract right now for this year. So if they decided to let him go, they would eat that number, I think, on their salary cap, which they would.
That's like half. That's like half.
They're not doing that. That's too much.
That's half the budget that you have. I think it's 200. I don't know what it is, 210, something like that million. I don't know what the cap is right now.
It's somewhere in that area. To
224.8, I see.
Yeah, that sounds right.
224.8. Okay.
Yeah, this doesn't show it directly. Anyway,
speaking of high cap hits, well, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, who have one of the highest paid quarterbacks, but maybe some people have said maybe should be higher paid even than he is, since a lot of these younger quarterbacks like Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow have signed contracts recently that actually pay more than what Mahomes' long 10-year contract paid from a couple of years ago. You can get into those.
But he is number 1 this year.
He's number 1 this year.
Yeah.
How many? What is his salary this year? According to
39.7 is his cap number for this season. Yeah, which is the highest amongst all the NFL quarterbacks for this season. Number 1 AFC, number 1 overall. Yeah.
Highest cap hit, 39.7 million. He's going to be 28 in September 17th. first round pick by the Chiefs in 2017. He was the number 10 overall pick. The Chiefs traded up from number 27 with the Buffalo Bills, and he was from Texas Tech. And he had monster numbers in college, but I think a lot of people thought, well, Texas Tech quarterbacks and Big 12 quarterbacks in that kind of spread offensive system have big numbers in college, but they don't produce in the NFL. And Mahomes has produced monster numbers in the NFL. He's led the Chiefs to a 64-16 regular season record, in 11-3 playoff record. So his playoff winning percentage is just as high or even higher than his regular season winning percentage. Two-time MVP, two-time Super Bowl MVP, 192 touchdowns, 49 interceptions over 5 years as a starter, career 105.7 passer rating. Last year he threw for his season high 5,250 yards, 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't think there's really any debate. He is, not a huge quarterback in terms of height, 6'2", maybe not book smart in the way that some quarterbacks might want to be. He only got 24 on the Wonderlic, which is about average for a quarterback, but he seems to be kind of a football savant in the way that he remembers the way coverages work or the way plays are run, and he can kind of improvise just with ease and really make other teams and players look foolish at times on the football field. So he's already probably a Hall of Fame quarterback. According to the Pro Football Reference Hall of Fame monitor, he has an 86.28 in terms of all his stats. He's higher than Russell Wilson, who's been in the league twice as long, and who also has a Super Bowl championship himself. So Wilson's 83.01 on the Quarterback Hall of Fame monitor. So
what's the cutoff number for what they say is a Hall of Famer for that?
I think let me see. It was the average. I think the average quarterback is about 100. So 108 is the average Hall of Fame quarterback right now.
Okay.
But that is kind of skewed by some, like Tom Brady, who hasn't gotten in yet, is a 263.
Yeah, titles count, like it's a fairly large counting stat that they add to that, right?
Once you reach 40,000 yards passing, you get numbers. Once you get a certain number of touchdowns, you also get points, championships, and all-pro appearances, Pro Bowl appearances, get stuff. So Mahomes has a lot of that, but he doesn't quite have the counting stats yet. MVP awards give you a lot. But yeah, Peyton Manning is number one of quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame at 257.80. But Brett Favre is fourth all time at 179. Johnny Unitas 160. Joe Montana 154. So that's about, those are like the heights originally. But yeah, Manning and Brady are both over 250. Aaron Rodgers is nearing 200 himself at 192. So modern quarterbacks who last a long time get high numbers. And so like the average Hall of Fame
MVPs count for a fairly large number, stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, like as the average Hall of Fame quarterback is 108, but like some of the great quarterbacks of yesteryear are lower than, like Bart Starr is 97, Terry Bradshaw is 95.7, Dan Fouts is 92, Roger Staubach 93, Len Dawson is 69, Joe Namath is 70. So there's Mahomes is already past him in those numbers. So, but quarterbacks ahead of him, like Philip Rivers is 98, Ben Roethlisberger about 100, Matt Ryan 106. Those are kind of borderline candidates, but they're higher than like some of the greats in terms, just because they play in a pass happier era. I think Roethlisberger will probably make the Hall of Fame, but I don't know about Matt Ryan or Philip Rivers. So Patrick Mahomes is just ahead of Eli Manning right now, and Russell Wilson. So it's hard to say who will, how those numbers will be weighed in. I don't think the Hall of Fame actually looks at that Hall of Fame monitor that Pro Football Reference puts up, but I think
is Eli Manning gonna make it?
Yeah, Eli Manning is 85.01, just below Patrick Mahomes. He has 2 championships, but he's got a lot of passing yards, but he has over 57,000 passing yards, but Philip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Ryan are all over 60,000. So they have the counting stats a little bit higher. They don't have the championship. Roethlisberger has 2 championships as well. And he was, so, I think Roethlisberger, his stats are a little better than Manning's. And I think he was seen as a quarterback maybe that carried his team more than Eli did. And Roethlisberger also competed in the AFC against Peyton Manning and Tom Brady during most of his career. So he had maybe a harder route to the Super Bowl than Manning. But Manning, of course, beat Tom Brady twice and beat one of his, it wasn't, just him, but it was his Giants team that, kept the 07 Patriots from being undefeated. So, it's sometimes narratives like that can play a big role.
So he looks like he finished his career in 2019, so we don't have to wait too much longer to find out.
Yeah.
For Eli, I guess.
Yeah.
It's 5 years after retirement for NFL, like it is in baseball.
I think
this would be his 4th season post retirement this year.
Yeah.
So
and so maybe it'll be 2025
after next year. Then
so 2025 nomination season
will be his first ballot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but so that's Mahomes. We're already talking about him with the all-time greats, and he's trying to chase people like Joe Montana and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady as the upper echelon of NFL quarterbacks. Below him on the depth chart has been maybe a little murkier than we thought probably at the beginning of training camp, simply because Shane Buechele has been playing so well. But I think probably we would assume at this point still that Blaine Gabbert will be the backup quarterback to Mahomes. He'll be 34 in October. Like Mahomes, he was also the 10th overall pick in the draft, 2011 by Jacksonville. He's from Baldwin, Missouri, outside of St. Louis. He played at Mizzou. I saw him in college play against K-State. He ran for a couple of touchdowns, I think, in that game. He didn't look very good or very fast, but K-State really couldn't do anything about it. So maybe that's why he didn't end up being a great player in the NFL. He just wasn't he couldn't outrun people in the way or outplay people in the way that he could in college. But he was with Jacksonville for 3 seasons through 2013. Then he went to San Francisco for 3 more, then Arizona 2017, the Titans 2018, Tampa Bay for the last 4 seasons, the last 3 years, whereas Brady's backup. He's 6'4.5", big guy. A 42 on the Wonderlic was Blaine Gabbert, so a very high score. For a quarterback, the average is about 24, 25, but if you get above a 40, it's out of 50 points. That's a really impressive score. So it was a 42. So maybe he absorbs material very well, and maybe that's a very good thing for someone like Mahomes to have as a wizened veteran like Chad Henne was, or Matt Moore was when earlier on the Chiefs. But is a 12 and 36 career record as a starter. He hasn't started a game though since 2018. Career, he has over 9,000 NFL passing yards, 51 touchdowns, 47 interceptions, about a 73 passer rating. So he hasn't really been a full-time starter since 2013. Although he did start 8 games replacing Colin Kaepernick in 2015. That was when people started souring on Kaepernick in San Francisco when we had Blaine Gabbert taking over. But Gabbert, solid, reliable backup. Probably you wouldn't probably want him as your quarterback for the whole season, but if you have a few games and if you have a good roster like the Chiefs do, maybe he can be like a Chad Henne or a Matt Moore and win a couple of games when you need him to. The opposite kind of approach as a backup will be Shane Buechele, but you want to talk about Gabbert some more?
I was going to say one thing, because I just pulled up his stats because I was curious to see how many championships he had. Gabbert has. He does have the one then with Tampa, but his Hall of Fame monitor number also came up. What do you think his Gabbert's Hall of Fame monitor number is?
11? I don't know.
0.63. Seems
0.63.
almost mean to go to that extra decimal point when it's that low of a number, but
0.63. I think if you get a certain number of points if you're on a championship team, but I think you only
if you're not the starter, it's less.
Yeah, especially as a quarterback. I think championships on the quarterback Hall of Fame monitor account for even more than most teams would. Well, another championship ring owner on the Chiefs quarterback depth chart is Shane Buechele, who got a ring as the third quarterback in 2022, but he's been with the Chiefs since 2021. He's 25 years old now. He was an undrafted free agent in 2021 from SMU. Same school Rashee Rice played for. Buechele started out at the University of Texas, however, and he was in 2016 actually the first freshman to start opening day as quarterback for Texas since Bobby Lane in 1944, Detroit Lions Hall of Fame quarterback. He's a little short, 6 feet tall. He was replaced by Sam Ehlinger at Texas, who was being out for the job. He was injured, and they liked Ehlinger better, so he ended up transferring to SMU. Ehlinger, who we'll mention, was with the Colts right now. Shane Buechele is the son of Steve Buechele, former Ranger, Pirate, Cub. But when Steve Buechele, Shane's dad, was in college at Stanford, do you know what famous athlete was Steve Buechele's roommate in college? He went to Stanford in the early 80s. He was John Elway's roommate.
Really?
In college, yeah. When he went to at SMU in 2 seasons, he had 57 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. So solid career at SMU, but wasn't drafted, but was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. But he's challenging right now for the backup quarterback position. At least he'll be the third QB and probably kept on the roster, because he was kept on the roster all of 2022 as an active player, not on the practice squad, because the Chiefs, I believe, thought he could be picked up by somebody else. In 2021, they actually put him on the active roster as well, because there were rumors that Arizona, the Cardinals, would pick him up when they had quarterback injuries, and they would want Buechele as one of their quarterbacks. So Buechele has been playing really great in the preseason. It seems like he's becoming maybe a Garoppolo type backup that can be flipped at some point for draft picks, or also serve as a spot starter in case something happens to Mahomes down the road. But Buechele, I would say, was probably not going to want to stick with KC, because he will want an opportunity to start somewhere. But really, the only chance that he'll get is if Mahomes hurts and Buechele can step in and shine. So it's maybe something that we don't want to see as Chiefs fans. The fourth quarterback on the Chiefs is Chris Oladokun. He's also 25, a 7th round pick in 2022 by the Steelers. He started at South Florida, then he went to Samford, which is in Alabama, not to be confused with Stanford, and then to South Dakota State for the Jackrabbits in FCS. In 2021, he had 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, over 3,000 yards passing. He's about 6'1", and so not a huge guy, but solid, maybe developmental quarterback. He was on the practice squad last year. It seems like that's probably the best hope for him this year, because the Chiefs are not going to have 4 rostered quarterbacks. He threw that interception in the first preseason game against New Orleans that ended up costing the Chiefs the game. But other than that, he's looked pretty good so far, I think, in preseason. But he's even been playing on the 3rd or 4th string. But maybe a developmental player down the road.
He had a higher passing rating than Patrick Mahomes had in the last preseason game. So
yeah,
now has that for his record.
He has a feather in his cap.
Yes.
What are the salaries that we have for
Mahomes at $39.7 million, Gabbert 1.1, Buechele $940K, and Oladokun $750K.
So it looks like they're all basically almost making minimum levels for
their years of service.
Yeah.
But as a team, then, the $42.5 million, I believe, is the highest in the NFL Yeah, combined quarterback salaries.
In terms of the cap hit, yeah.
Also higher than the NFC South collectively.
Ooh, well, do
Yeah,
you
42.5 million. The NFC South combined 36.5 million.
that would be interesting to see, like an all-star NFC South team, the best players from all four teams,
Yeah.
if they played like the Chiefs or one of the top teams, and because the South is not very good. In any, like, I guess you could say maybe some of their roster parts are good, but like their quarterback play is, NFC South's best quarterback might be Derek Carr. I guess if Derek Carr was on an all-star team, maybe they would be.
Well, I think the second best quarterback in the NFC South is on the same roster.
Jameis Winston. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We thought last week, maybe. Yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a crazy division. Yeah.
yeah. Well, speaking of Derek Carr, he was on the Raiders last year, the Las Vegas Raiders. He was run out of town by Raiders fans, I guess, for not being able to win the big one and get the team to the playoffs, and maybe by head coach Josh McDaniels, who decided he wanted to go back to his New England roots and woo Jimmy Garoppolo to Las Vegas. Garoppolo himself was run out of San Francisco, even though he led that team to, NFC championships and playoff appearances fairly regularly. But Garoppolo, who also might be the handsomest quarterback in the NFL, he is 31. He'll be 32 during the season in November. Former second-round pick by New England from Eastern Illinois. Do you know any other famous Eastern Illinois quarterbacks?
I do not.
One is in the CBS broadcast booth. Tony Romo was most recently, probably. But also, Denver coach Sean Payton was an Eastern Illinois quarterback, as was former Super Bowl coach and Garoppolo's former coach's dad. So Kyle Shanahan's dad, Mike Shanahan, was a former quarterback in Eastern Illinois. Mike Shanahan actually almost died on the field at a game or practice for Eastern Illinois. His kidneys was lacerated somehow, and a priest actually delivered the last rites to Shanahan on the field at Eastern Illinois, like 1972. But Shanahan obviously lived, and he's still alive, as far as I know. And he won 2 Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos, and was a solid NFL coach. Another former Eastern Illinois quarterback who became an NFL head coach was former Chiefs assistant coach and Vikings head coach Brad Childress, who was the kind of passing and college spread offense coordinator for the Chiefs when they brought in Mahomes, or right before they brought in Mahomes. So maybe he was kind of able to help the transition of Mahomes to the pros. So it seems like a lot of Eastern Illinois quarterbacks become strong head coaches. But anyway, back to Garoppolo. He's got a career 99.6 passer rating, which is, anything around 100 is very good. 87 touchdowns, only 42 interceptions in his career. A 40-17 career record as a starter, a 4-2 playoff record. Most of that came since he was traded to San Francisco in the 2017 season. However, there's a question: is he an upgrade over Derek Carr? Carr's a good quarterback too. Garoppolo is pretty good, but he was not able to win really, really big games. At least that's what it was thought. So it's the same knocks that you have on Carr that you have on Garoppolo. I guess Carr might.
But in sort of different ways, though. Carr was like, the knock against him was that he would maybe be too much of a gunslinger, and Garoppolo's more of a game manager. Yes,
maybe a little bit. Yeah, I think Carr was good at throwing a deep. I think Carr also had times where he became very conservative as well. So I think in his I don't
think Garoppolo goes downfield like at all, does he?
No, Garoppolo doesn't usually, but that was maybe because that's the same San Francisco game plan.
Yeah,
but it's hard to say. But I think you have 6 of one.
I'm pretty sure last season, Purdy had many more passes of longer yardage than Garoppolo had in the few starts that Purdy had before the end of the regular season. Anyway, that was
I don't know if Garoppolo is going to be a big improvement over Carr. He's just a different guy, and
Well, there was some question if he was healthy enough to even sign the contract, I believe, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was issues. He was injured still, and maybe he didn't fail the physical, but was only recently maybe able to pass the physical in training camp or something like that. When he signed his contract, he wasn't yet able to do so. So yeah, Garoppolo, I think, has a lot of question marks behind him, but he is a solid NFL quarterback, and but not spectacular. But that's the same problem they had with Carr. So it's like, you might say, why did they get rid of Carr and bring in Garoppolo? But Garoppolo is making a lot more money this year than Carr is this year. So he's what is Garoppolo's salary this year?
23.8 million for this season. Yeah, to Carr's 7.2. So
yeah, I think I'd rather have Carr for 7.2 than Garoppolo for 24, but
yeah,
I don't.
Garoppolo did make an appearance in preseason game 2.
Okay, so he is
field worthy, at least, anyway. He's
okay.
4-4.
Well, because I think behind Garoppolo you have a lot of question marks. Well, one of Garoppolo's old teammates, or I don't know if he actually played on the same team at the same time, but was Brian Hoyer, who was probably brought in to be the primary backup to Garoppolo. He's 38 years old. He'll be 38 in October, actually. He's 37 right now, but he's a 2009 undrafted free agent from Michigan State, and he's been with several NFL teams since then. So he was originally brought in by the Patriots. He was with the Patriots until 2011. Then he was with Pittsburgh in 2012, Arizona in 2012, Cleveland through 2014, Houston in 2015, where he actually was the starter and started, I think, the playoff game against the Chiefs, the one that the Chiefs shut out the Texans for their first playoff win in 20 years or something like that. I think it was, or almost 20 years in 2015. He went to Chicago in 2016. He started some games there. He went to San Francisco in 2017. Ironically, he was released when Jimmy G was signed with the 49ers. So he went back to New England when Jimmy G went to San Francisco. So he's basically switched teams. He was in New England 17 and 18, Indianapolis 2019, New England again through 2022. So he's been at New England a long time. So he's a lot of familiarity with Josh McDaniels. He started some games in his career, 16 and 24 record as a starter. He was a full-time starter in Cleveland and Houston, started a bit for Chicago as well. 53 touchdowns, 35 interceptions in his NFL career, 83-ish passer rating. He started one game last year in New England before he had a concussion. This is when Mac Jones was injured, and then he was replaced by Bailey Zappi, who both of whom we'll talk about, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, when we talk about the Patriots. But so he's, he is maybe what Chad Henne, or not, and maybe not quite as good Chad Henne, or not quite as good Blaine Gabbert, we might say. I don't know. Well, his full-time starter record is better than Blaine Gabbert's, but he's also 4 years older than Gabbert. But I don't know whom I would rather have. But would you rather have Brian Hoyer as your backup, or would you rather have Blaine Gabbert as your backup?
I don't think it really. I don't think it makes a difference if you have the Chiefs offense, if that's what you're talking about.
I guess you would say that Gabbert has better tools because he was a first-round draft pick and Hoyer was undrafted. Maybe you could
Gabbert's
say
$500,000 cheaper too, if that means anything.
Yeah. Maybe you could say that, well, Hoyer is stuck with it even though he's not very talented, but Gabbert is also stuck with it even though he maybe could have been discouraged, and his basically doppelganger Blake Bortles is already out of the league. He was, I think, 3 or 4 years younger than Gabbert, also drafted in the first round by Jacksonville as Gabbert's replacement. He had an equally kind of dumb name and did equally poorly as Jacksonville's starter. He actually did a little better as Jacksonville's starter because he did lead Jacksonville to the playoffs one year. But Bortles, I think, is no longer. I think he has retired last year. But
did he actually retire?
Yeah, he hasn't. Yeah.
October 5th, 2022, retired from professional football.
Yeah, so he stuck around when he was I think he was the Rams backup when Stafford was around. for a while, and then I'm not sure where he.
And then he went to Green Bay, was on the Green Bay practice squad. On New Year's Eve of 2021, he moved to New Orleans. And then he was released by New Orleans before camp 2022. So then he retired in October.
Okay. Yeah, so Blake Bortles is 31, so he's 3 years younger-ish than Gabbert. So, but Hoyer 38. But Hoyer, it seems like, has been pushed in training camp by Aiden O'Connell, who will be 25 on September 1st. He is his rookie. This is his rookie season, a 4th-round pick from Purdue. He was a former walk-on there, a 2-year starter at Purdue. His best year is probably 2021, but he played pretty well in 2022. 65 touchdowns, 30 interceptions in his career at Purdue. He averaged about 3,500 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in 2 full starting years. No mobility really whatsoever. At least he didn't show that in college, but he's a big guy, 6'3.5". But he's been playing very well in the preseason. He was a 4th-round pick, so maybe he could supplant Hoyer on the depth chart sooner rather than later. I think it seems like I've heard things about Aiden O'Connell in training camp saying that other teams maybe should have drafted him earlier since he's doing such a good job. But I don't. Again, it's training camp and it's preseason. It's hard to say. But
It looks like Hoyer took the second team snaps in their second preseason game. It does not look like he did that well, and he did throw an interception that was returned for a touchdown. So his stat line was not great. 12, 22, 144 yards, and an interception that was returned for a touchdown. Aiden O'Connell was 11 of 18 for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
So. Yeah, I think, and partly because I think of Brock Purdy's success, I think people are thinking longtime starters at kind of mid-level college programs are able to step in and do fairly well at the NFL level. And maybe that's what they think Connell can do, because Purdy at Iowa State, 4 solid years there, maybe that's what you want as a maybe more polished player than some, old veteran to stick around. I don't know. So, but that's O'Connell. If you Google Aiden O'Connell, you'll see, Raiders might have a huge draft steal in Aiden O'Connell, or Aiden O'Connell playing like a savvy veteran in 2023, or NFL Insider compares O'Connell to Tom Brady. They've got all of this hype around O'Connell right now. It's hard to say whether that's going to continue or not, but
you think they'll regret having spent that money on Garoppolo instead of somebody else that they could spend it elsewhere instead of at the quarterback position?
It's possible. I think the Raiders, though, wanted Carr out, and I think McDaniels wants desperately to hold on to his job, and probably thinks the only real way I can hold on to it is if somebody that I can play at quarterback has Patriots experience, because they understand the offense that I like to run, and the Patriots run it well. And here's a former Patriot in Garoppolo. I have a backup former Patriot in Hoyer. And, I didn't expect to get this third guy in O'Connell, who might be better than both of them at some point. But, it's hard to, I don't know. It's hard to blame, I guess, McDaniels for trying to do what he's doing. But as you thought he was a terrible hire last year, I didn't think it was a very good hire. I thought maybe Nathaniel Hackett was a worse hire, which he's gone already. But it seems like McDaniels has not been
I had them flipped as who was worse, and I think it's funnier that the Raiders have kept McDaniels.
Yeah, you thought it was worse simply because we already knew that McDaniels was a bad coach, and why hire him a second time? Although you could say, well, sometimes the second time they do better than the first time. But I think, I don't think you are wrong either. But I do think, like I said, Hackett was singularly bad, which I was maybe not quite as bad as somebody like Urban Meyer, but he was out of his depth as a head coach. And well, back to the Raiders. Their fourth quarterback in camp right now is Chase Garbers, who's 2024. Also brought in, he was actually brought in from Cal, an undrafted free agent in 2022. He spent last year on the Vegas practice squad. He's actually a year younger than O'Connell is, even though he's been with the Raiders a year. So like a lot of these older quarterbacks coming in, because a lot of them, COVID, I think, affected a lot of them. Everybody got an extra year of eligibility. Lots of times as well, people are transferring more than they have before, and many people are playing a fifth, sometimes sixth year of eligibility. But at Cal, Garbers was at a 19-14 career record as a starter, 50 touchdowns, 24 interceptions, so solid numbers. He actually graduated from Berkeley and got a graduate certificate while I was there, so he was probably a smart guy. I couldn't find a Wonderlic score, so I assumed he's probably fairly bright when he went to Berkeley, although Aaron Rodgers also went to Berkeley, and he's smart in some ways, maybe not so smart in other ways. But that's Garbers, as probably I would say probably practice squad candidate. Maybe you could say possible third quarterback if they decide to let Hoyer go. I think Hoyer is probably the most expendable of the top quarterbacks anyway. I don't what salary information do you have on these Raiders or other
Garoppolo, 23.8 million, Hoyer 1.6, Aiden O'Connell and Chase Garbers are each under $1 million each, so they're more or less rookie contracts. 877 for O'Connell, 750 for Garbers.
Does Aiden O'Connell have the most Irish name of any starting quarterback, or any quarterback on an NFL roster?
I think so. Ben DiNucci's the most Italian? Was that?
I would say so. I'm just looking at all the names now. Yeah, I think yeah. But so we want to move on to the Los Angeles Chargers, the fourth team in our Western AFC West division, last alphabetically, but second place in the division last year. They're led by Justin Herbert, who is 25, so he's the same age as Aiden O'Connell. This is his
younger than Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, this is his.
This
is gonna be his fourth year in the NFL. 2020, number 6 overall pick from Houston. He actually played 4 years, I think, at Oregon. He's 6'6". He had a 39 on the Wonderlic, so smart, high scoring, huge numbers at Oregon. He had 61 touchdowns to 14 interceptions his last 2 seasons. Some people thought he might actually be the number 1 overall pick in 2019 had he gone out. He ends up going in 2020. He's actually the 3rd quarterback taken. Joe Burrow was number 1 overall. Tua Tagovailoa, Miami Dolphins starter, who we'll talk about both of those quarterbacks shortly. I think we'll talk about both of them in part 2 of our AFC preview, part 3 of this week's episode. So he was, Herbert was actually a great player from the very beginning. He ends up starting in his rookie year. He has a 94 touchdowns, 35 interceptions, 96.2 quarterback rating in 3 seasons. He hasn't really gotten a lot better in terms of his numbers as the seasons have gone on. He's passed for about almost over 14,000 yards in those 3 seasons, which is a record for a quarterback in his first 3 seasons, at least his rookie through 3rd season. Mahomes doesn't quite get those records because he didn't start very much as a rookie. So a lot of the Herbert has the most touchdown passes of any quarterback in his first 3 seasons, more than Mahomes, because Mahomes only played 1 game in his rookie year. But he has only a 25-24 record, however, as a starter. So the team has only been kind of middling around him. 0-1 in the playoffs. The team, of course, blew a 27-0 lead against Jacksonville in the wild card game last season. He's a great quarterback, 6'6", big guy, strong arm. But can he win the big game? Can his game reach another level? Maybe bringing in the new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, from the Dallas Cowboys, former Boise State quarterback, maybe could help. But it seems like there's, for the Chargers to really be good, probably needs Herbert to kind of take the next leap but right now he just signed a huge contract where I think he's going to be the highest paid quarterback or one of them in the league. So, but solid.
Not this season, though.
Not this season. He's still
he's still on the rookie part of his deal. I think the extension when it kicks in will become much more pricey. Yeah, he's another one of those guys that this year it's $8.5 million. Next year it'll jump to 19.3 million, like more than doubling. But that doesn't matter for this season.
So this is the last year probably that the Chargers can really have the cheap rookie quarterback deal. Even next year it's not too bad, but 2 years from now it's going to be you're going to be dealing with what the Chiefs deal with Mahomes, where they have good players that they might not be able to pay, like Chris Jones or Tyreek Hill, because they have so much money tied up in their quarterback. And the salary cap, the way it works in the NFL, it's not very high because the NFL owners don't want to pay very much, especially the lower ranking teams. They don't want to pay a lot for their salaries, so they want to keep everybody else down. This is traditionally what the Cincinnati Bengals were, the cheapest team, so they wanted the lowest salary cap possible, so they could appear less cheap in to the general public
in comparison.
Yeah, but now with Joe Burrow, things are changing. We'll talk about the Bengals later, but behind Herbert on the depth chart are two quarterbacks, both fairly young. Although Easton Stick is 28 now; he'll be 28 in September. Drafted the year before Herbert in 2019, a 5th-round pick by the Chargers from North Dakota State. He was their starting quarterback between Carson Wentz and Trey Lance. He was actually 49-3 as a college starter in terms of his record. Won multiple national championships in the FCS. 88 touchdowns to 27 interceptions in college, plus 41 rushing touchdowns. So a dual threat, mobile, a 32 on the Wonderlic, so not too shabby either. But he's never played an NFL snap. He almost did in 2020 in Herbert's rookie season when Herbert had his bell rung or was kind of wobbly, but the Chargers called timeout instead, and they decided to put Herbert back in. So Stick couldn't get his one chance. Do you think Easton Stick gets his chance this year to play for Herbert?
Last year he didn't get to. Who played? Who was the backup last season when Herbert was down? Because he missed part of a game, didn't he? Last season?
Well, he was hurt a bit with against the Chiefs.
Oh, but he didn't miss. Oh, but he didn't miss any of it, did he?
I don't believe he missed any snaps. I didn't find any stats. Oh wait, he did have stats. I'm sorry. He was in part of a game. He was 21 for 41, 233 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 48.1 rating, it says. Oh, wait, no, that's preseason. Never mind. That was preseason. Apparently in his career,
in 2020, he had one pass.
Oh.
He was 1 for 1 for 4 yards.
Okay, so maybe he got one play in, and then
he also had 1 carry for -2 yards.
Okay.
So in 2020.
2020. So he did get in for 2 plays in 2020. So I guess
at least 2 plays.
So maybe where
that is all.
Okay, they must
that's not
my information must have been wrong then. But so he has gotten in for 2 plays at least.
Oh yeah, because last season Herbert did play hurt for maybe several weeks even, right? Where that sounds right.
So Easton Stick.
Yeah, I think he gets one start, a spot start this season. What do you think?
Well, it depends. If the Chargers are blown out or blow somebody out, maybe a backup will get in, or an injury. You don't hope for an injury. So, but yeah, maybe Stick will get in. Easton Stick, who probably, as I think, probably has the dumbest name in the AFC quarterbacks. He's not quite. I don't think he's quite Dresser Wynn or Stetson Bennett, but he's up there.
In the same class.
Yeah.
Name-wise.
Easton, I think, is more of a name, but Stick as a last name is Funny.
It's not where I thought you were going with that. That's funny.
Max Duggan is the third quarterback, 22 years old, 7th round pick from TCU. He's a Council Bluffs, Iowa native. What do you think of the city of being an Iowa native yourself and an Iowa State alumnus, both undergraduate and doctorally? What do you think of Council Bluffs, Iowa, on the Missouri River?
It is the casino side of Omaha, I believe. So I don't know. I knew a few people from Council Bluffs. They were pretty great on the same dorm floor as an undergrad. But I've never spent any time there, so I don't really.
What is your least favorite Iowa city? Is it Iowa City because it's where the University of Iowa is located?
Yeah, it's basically like the center of hell. I don't know. If you were to depict Mordor from the Lord of the Rings series in the real world, I believe it would be Iowa City. Does that sound right?
I've spent some time. I went through Iowa City once. I thought it was pretty pleasant.
It's fine, but that's not funny though, Mike.
But I like your hatred of the University of Iowa. But Max Duggan was from Council Bluffs, and he went to TCU. He led TCU actually to the BCS title game last year, surprisingly, when they got blown out.
Didn't get so good.
Stetson Bennett's Georgia Bulldogs was like 60-something to 7 or whatever. It was really
one of the ugliest games I've watched.
Yeah, it was really bad. He had 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, almost 3,700 yards passing, plus 423 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns. Heisman Trophy winner, runner up. So he's second place in the Heisman Trophy race. So I would say he's probably definitely the third quarterback, or do you think he has a chance to supplant Stick? Will Stick as the second quarterback? Or will Duggan I don't know. Will he have dug his way in to the second position? I'm trying to think of the punniest
stick metaphors that you can come up with.
Yeah. What's the max level that Duggan can reach?
I think 3. I don't think he's gonna supplant Stick.
I think Stick will stick as well.
Yeah.
We're stuck with Stick as number 2.
Stuck with Stick. Yes.
Stick, I think if Stick were running for re-election, I think that's the easiest slogan you could ever have is Stick with Stick.
Stick with Stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a great.
It looks like he played the entirety of the Chargers' second preseason game.
Stick did or Duggan?
Easton Stick did, yeah. 21 of 41, 233 yards, 2 picks. That was the stat line I think you just had.
Yeah, that was the stat line I looked at. It was the
straight up in that list though. Yes. He also had 7 carries for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns though. So did you say that part too?
I did not say that part. So okay. I left the bad. I said the bad parts, but left the good parts out. But Easton Stick, potential second quarterback.
Yeah. What do you think about the Chargers wide receiver named Stone Smart? But Smart is spelled with 2 T's.
No way. Is he going to make the roster?
I have no idea. I just saw the name. I just had the name on the box score just popped up anyway. So
Stone Smart.
Stone Smart.
He went to Old Dominion. He went to Del Oro High School, Williams, California. He played quarterback in high school. 6'4", not very fast, undrafted free agent. But he did have 4 receptions last year, 17 receiving yards. So he got into 7 games. So maybe he'll be another special teams contributor. Stone Smart, 2 T's. Reminds me a little bit of when Homer Simpson saying "I am so smart."
Yes,
I am smart. SMRT.
MRT.
Yes, Stone Smart. Hopefully having Stone is not a good name for a receiver. You want to have soft hands, but maybe
Hands of stone.
Yeah, that smarts when you're hit by the stone. And
He is
unfair.
listed as fourth on the tight end depth chart for the
Who's tight end?
Chargers, behind Trey McKitty.
Oh, these Los Angeles Charger names, or maybe they have the worst names of any AFC West team. But how are the salaries looking? I'm sure Stick and Duggan don't make very much money.
Yeah, Herbert's 8.5 this year. We'll go to 19.3 next year. Easton Stick at 1.2 million, Max Duggan 772K. But yeah, so the combined AFC West has $106 million in QB salary, which is 33% more than the highest NFC division.
Oh wow.
Was that interesting?
That is interesting, I think, but it also is somewhat telling that the AFC has much better quarterbacks than the NFC does.
Well, it's kind of an arms race too in the division. That no team wants to be totally left out. They do have the 1, 3, and 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the AFC. Mahomes won. Garoppolo is the third highest paid AFC quarterback, and Russell Wilson is fifth.
And he will balloon.
And then he will. Yes, that is accurate.
You want to move on to the AFC South, where we have a different tale of starting quarterbacks, where we, for the most part, do not have big salaries, except one, probably Tannehill, Tennessee.
Yeah, there are 2 top 10 salaries, though.
Ooh, I guess Trevor Lawrence going number 1, maybe moving into the top 10 as well.
9, yes. Yeah, Tannehill's 2, though.
Yeah, Tannehill had made a lot of money. He had a big contract with the Titans.
I think this is the last year of his deal.
This is the last year of his deal, and so it's
this is the balloon year, I guess.
Yeah, so you're wondering who is going to what these teams are going to do in coming years. 3 of the teams have, it seems like, their young quarterbacks in place. Although 2 of these are very unproven. Only one of them has had any of those success, and the Titans maybe also have young quarterbacks that are on the rise. But do we want to start in the South alphabetically with the Houston Texans? Did you know that 2 of the teams in the AFC South have nicknames that were used by 2 other AFC teams in their past?
Oh, I don't know how that is. What do you mean?
So the Houston Texans, of course, the Dallas Texans were the Kansas City Chiefs were the Dallas Texans.
Oh, yeah. Before. Okay, I got you.
So they took that nickname, which is already used by another team, and it's
I thought you were talking about like quarterback names were like nicknames of teams. Like,
no, I was thinking team nicknames. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
And the other team is the Tennessee Titans. The New York Jets were one time known as the New York Titans. So neither of those teams and of course the Tennessee Titans used to be the Houston Oilers, so they're connected in that way as well. So these Houston Tennessee teams, neither one can think of their own nickname that hasn't been used already by some other conference team that they jettisoned. So
right.
Anyway, CJ Stroud, Coleridge Bernard Stroud the 4th. I guess we figured a few weeks ago that we think maybe a few months ago, talking about the draft, that CJ was probably Coleridge Jr. For CJ, even though there's no J in Bernard Stroud, or 4th, but it's by Coleridge Jr. His dad was probably CS Stroud. 22 in October, 1st round pick in 2023 from Ohio State, number 2 overall. In the last 2 years as a starter, he had 85 touchdown passes for Ohio State, only 12 interceptions. He probably had a little better year, though, in 21 than 22. It seems to be a common denominator for a lot of these quarterbacks. They don't always have their best years as their last year in college, and maybe that's a red flag. But he averaged about 4,000 yards passing per season at Ohio State. 6'3", not terribly mobile, but maybe wasn't called on to do that. He did show some mobility in the BCS playoff, uh, in the college football playoff series. It's not the BCS anymore. I still call it the BCS, but the CFB playoff, I think they call it now. And he replaced Justin Fields as the starter in Columbus. He actually beat out Quinn Ewers, who is now at Texas, start in 2021. High hopes for Stroud, but he was the second quarterback taken. Bryce Young was taken number 1 overall. We have the next quarterback taken in Indianapolis. We'll talk about Anthony Richardson in a little bit, but at this point, it's hard to say who is going to be the best of those rookie quarterbacks. The Texans hope that Stroud will be, but I don't really have any idea. I think I like Stroud better than Bryce Young simply because he can see over the line, and Bryce Young can't, and is probably going to be throwing into the back of people's helmets most of the time. But that's just me. But Stroud is his salary is inked already because it's a slot designation. What's Stroud making this year?
It's 6.6 million for this.
That's the number 2 overall pick. That's a pretty good rookie salary.
Not a bad salary, but he's expected to start. So.
He's expected to start. Yeah. The backup. Well, so we have 3 potential backup quarterbacks. We have a veteran and we have a couple of younger guys. Case Keenum is the veteran. He is 35. He actually is a former undrafted free agent in 2012 from the Houston Cougars, the University of Houston football team. He put up huge numbers at Houston in the kind of spread offense before it really became widespread in the National Football League. He was with the Texans originally from 2012 to 13, then with the Rams, then back to the Texans, back to the Rams, with the Vikings, the Broncos, Washington, then with the Browns 2020 and 2021, with the Bills last year, and now back with the Texans for a 3rd time. Huge numbers in college. Not so huge in the NFL, but he's been a serviceable starter. He's not a big guy, but he is over 6 feet tall, which seems like the limit usually, unless you're Russell Wilson, who's like 5'11" and some change. Kyler Murray has proven maybe you can be a 5'10" mobile quarterback, but he's not maybe worth the money that Arizona is paying him, and they might switch to a different quarterback next year. So, you want somebody who is tall back in center. And so usually it's over 6 feet tall is what people want. Dr. Scaff, you're well over 6 feet tall, so you'd be a prototypical NFL size, even though you're about 25 years too old to
and very, very slow.
We're about 20 years too old probably to be drafted now. But as am I. I'm 6'1", so I'm on the fringe. I'm on the cusp. Yeah. But like Case Keenum. But he has started more than 60 games in the NFL, 29-35 record as a starter, 85.2 career passer rating, which is decent, probably average, you'd say, at this point in NFL history. In the 80s, you probably want to be a 90s or 100 or above to be a really good quarterback, but he's got 78 touchdowns, 48 interceptions in his career. 2016 through 19 were his main starting seasons. So he started with the Rams. He was a starter for the Rams, a starter for the Vikings in 2017, famously in that miracle in Minneapolis or playoff game. He was the starter when the Vikings beat the Saints on that kind of crazy deflection play. He started with the Broncos in 2018, and that didn't work out very well. And then Washington, where he played after, I think, Alex Smith got catastrophically injured. But solid backup, getting older, 35 now, but seems like he can still probably serve in a pinch as the backup. What's Keenum making? Is he making a lot of money as a backup?
He's at 2.8 million, which is a little high for backup salaries, but in this division, it's it seems like there's actually a trend where they have a very young quarterback as the starter, and then a more seasoned veteran as the backup in there. So they're paying a little more for that role apparently
Yeah,
in the AFC South.
yeah, and the two quarterbacks behind Keenum. So Stroud is only 22, so he's fairly young, but he's not the youngest quarterback in the division. But he is the youngest quarterback on the Texans roster. But the other two quarterbacks are 25 years old, or will be 25 soon. Davis Mills will be 25 in early October. He was a third-round pick from Stanford in 2021. He's taller, about 6'4". He only started 12 times in college. So he didn't have a lot of college stats or college starts, but he's actually started 16 games in the NFL. So he started more games in the NFL so far than he has in college. In 2021 in Houston, he was the backup to Tyrod Taylor originally, who got hurt. That was just kind of the poor luck of Tyrod Taylor, who tends to get hurt, and then other people come in. That happened with Justin Herbert as well. But as a starter overall, the last two seasons, Mills has been as a 5-20-1 record. So not very good, but the Texans have been a bad team. So, is it his fault? Is it, the team's 33 touchdowns, 25 interceptions, 83.3 quarterback rating, almost 3,000 yards a season. So, but he's probably, I would say, the third quarterback with Stroud and Keenum coming in. I think he's probably been bumped down to number 3 with the new coaching staff, and they'd probably want an older veteran to mentor Stroud and maybe also to help Mills. But I think probably Keenum is going to be the second quarterback call, the first quarterback called off the bench if Stroud struggles or if Stroud is injured. Is that your assessment? Do you think?
That's what I would have thought too, but ESPN's depth chart has them flipped as Davis Mills 2, Keenum 3. But I don't know. But they're paid as if they were the other way around. Keenum at 2.8 million, Davis Mills at 1.4 million for this season.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have an eye on the Texans as closely as some other people. So perhaps
he may have more seniority because he's already been on the Texans.
And it's also because, the second and third quarterback designation isn't quite as important if teams carry 3 quarterbacks now and have 3 quarterbacks active. And this might change depending on who the opponent is. And maybe somebody like, if you got hurt in the middle of a game, if Stroud had come out in the middle of the game, maybe you'd want Keenum to come in during the middle of the game and finish. But maybe if you think, Stroud's not going to be available for 5 or 6 games, maybe we'll put Mills in as the long-term backup rather than, but as a, in a pinch, we'll put in Keenum because he's probably more prepared and can come in at a moment's notice. I don't know. Maybe that's what you do. The fourth quarterback is E.J. Perry, Ernest Joseph Perry IV. He played at Boston College, then Brown. So it sounds like he's a fourth if he's Ivy League player. Undrafted free agent in 2022. Jaguars practice squad last year. He was a 2-year starter at Brown. There was no 2020 Ivy League season because of COVID, so he played in 2019 and 2021. He is the nephew of former Texans wide receivers coach John Perry, also the nephew of Brown coach and former Brown quarterback James Perry. So he's the nephew of just about everybody. Is this nepotism with E.J. Perry? Is that how he gets his job, being the nephew of somebody important?
Legacy quarterbacks, as in is still better than legacy coaches. I think we've talked about that last week.
Yeah. Well, E.J. Perry only had a 6-18 record as a starter for Boston College and Brown. But he did have some decent stuff. 47 touchdowns to 27 interceptions, more than 6,000 yards passing, plus 1,200 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. So he could do quite a few things, but his teams tended not to be very good. But maybe it's, in Perry's sense, though, maybe it's a little bit more who you know. And that's how he got his
maybe
job. I don't know. but and Perry, though, as we'll talk about, is not the least qualified backup quarterback in the AFC. That'll be our last quarterback that we mention in part 3 of today's episode, part 2 of our preview.
Yes.
So those are the quarterbacks for Houston Texans. What do you think of them?
I will note that you have 4 quarterbacks on the roster, but only 2 of them actually appeared in the most recent preseason game. CJ Stroud and Davis Mills played. Stroud started the game and had a not great first series. Mike, how about this? Actually, both teams had a terrible first series. And in the first play from scrimmage for Miami, Tua threw an interception, which was taken down to the 7-yard line. And then Houston was unable to score any points with CJ Stroud under center. So that's not a great start to the game.
I don't know if you necessarily would want to start these rookie quarterbacks first. I don't know. It's the same thing with Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson has been named the starter. Do you want to move on to the Colts, or is there any more we want to talk about with Houston?
No, I mean, Houston had a terrible preseason game. Yeah, so Davis Mills played most of the game, but yeah, EJ Perry and Case Keenum did not appear in that game, apparently. That's all I was going to say about that.
Yeah, so we have Stroud as the starter. We also have a young first-round quarterback taken early in the draft in Indianapolis as the named starter already. It doesn't seem like he probably earned that job through great play in camp, but he's the future of the program. So we're going to put Anthony Richardson in. He is 21 years old, so the youngest of the first-round early quarterbacks taken 4th overall from Florida in 2023. He's a big guy, 6'4", 250 pounds. Only 1 year, though, as a starter at Florida, but he has these measurable stats that jump off the charts. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash. He has a 40.5-inch vertical leap, and he's big like Cam Newton or Dante Culpepper. He's that kind of physical specimen. In 2022 for the Gators, he didn't have great stats, only about 2,500 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 654 rushing yards, and 9 touchdowns. So he's a big he's a project. And he also, as I said, maybe compares to somebody like Cam Newton or Dante Culpepper, a dual threat kind of big punishing runner. But those kind of quarterbacks don't always last a long time in the NFL either. But he did recently undergo nasal septum surgery to help with his breathing in the offseason. Do you think that's the trick that will set him apart? Because he will be able to breathe comfortably, and he won't at night, and I guess on the football field, so he won't be out of breath.
Sure, absolutely, Mike. That's breathing is a key factor in performance. So I'm gonna go with it's probably gonna make a big difference.
Your dad, I believe, had a deviated septum, right, and had surgery for it.
Yeah.
Like when we were in high school, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember that, but
I don't know why either. Yeah,
I remember odd details about people's lives.
I guess so.
But you mentioned your dad earlier complaining about the Royals lineup, so I was thinking of David Scaff.
Yes,
but Richardson has been tabbed as the starter over 2 quarterbacks with starting experience who are fairly young as well. One new quarterback and one not old face, but one familiar face to Colts fans from last season. But the new guy brought in is Gardner Minshew. He is Gardner Flint Minshew II. He's 27, former 2019 6th-round pick from Washington State. He started at a school called Northwest Mississippi, then went to East Carolina, to these weird directions, and then Washington State. Big season at Washington State as a senior with Mike Leach as the coach. He's 6'1". He actually beat out Tanner Lee and Alex Magoo to back up Nick Foles in Jacksonville in 2019. And he made his debut as a rookie in 2019 on opening day against the Chiefs when Nick Foles broke his collarbone. And so he actually played pretty well that rookie that game and that rookie season. There was Minshew mania in Jacksonville, but the last 2 seasons though he's been in Philadelphia because Trevor Lawrence was brought in, and he's the number 1 guy, not Minshew. And last 2 seasons he's been in Philadelphia as Jalen Hurts is back up. He had started a couple games last year. 8-16 overall as a starter. 6,632 yards passing, 44 touchdowns to only 15 interceptions, and a career 93.1 rating. So he's a solid, ish quarterback. Again, I don't know why you start Richardson unless you just say, well, this is the lost season. We want to get a higher draft pick, and I don't know if, sometimes just throwing a guy out to the Wolves does not help them develop, and it just, I don't know. I don't, unless Richardson's really shown something, I think Minshew should be the starter in Indianapolis. Or even the third quarterback, Sam Ellinger, should be the starter this year in Indianapolis, at least to start out with. Because I think you could at least make the case with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. They were more polished college quarterbacks than Anthony Richardson was. And Richardson doesn't have much experience as a starter. And if you don't have much experience as a starter in college, you kind of need to adjust, I think, to the NFL. But those are my 2 cents. Would you agree with that, or do you have a?
Well, it does seem that of all of the teams in the AFC, this team is the least stable at quarterback position. In the NFC, I think we thought that the Bucks probably had I think the Bucks, right?
Green Bay had the worst quarterbacks. I think
Green Bay has pretty bad, but Tampa's was a weird situation at least too. But yeah, Green Bay is the least well thought out of the group. This is better. This is still, it's like a young. I think on paper it seems okay, but it's like there's just nobody that you're really counting on in this like group anyway.
I think if you have Minshew as the old elder statesman, I think like he's he can start in the league. Sam Ellinger you have as the third quarterback. He'll be 25. He was a 6th round pick in 2021 from the University of Texas. He actually went to Westlake High School in Austin, Texas, where he broke passing records set by both Drew Brees and the aforementioned Nick Foles. And so he was a 3+ year starter at Texas. He is 6'1". He was listed as 6'3" in college, but I think he's about 6'1". 94 touchdowns to 27 interceptions in college, plus almost 2,000 rushing yards, 33 touchdowns. He actually took the starting job from Shane Buechele when Buechele was hurt and the coaches wanted a change. He passed Nick Foles again as both Minshew, who passed Nick Foles, who supplanted Nick Foles as a starter in Jacksonville, and Sam Ellinger passed Nick Foles as the backup quarterback at Indy last year. Actually started 3 games during the unwise Jeff Saturday era. Matt Ryan was brought in as quarterback last year. It was Philip Rivers. No, it was Carson Wentz the year before. Philip Rivers the year before that, right? I think. Is that the right order? And Andrew Luck was before he retired. And so like there's been a new quarterback every year in Indianapolis. So Ellinger played 3 games. He started 3 games. 63% completion rate, not terrible. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, 573 yards passing, plus 87 yards rushing. So he's got a running background as well. So, but I would say either of those 2 quarterbacks is probably in better position, either Minshew or Ellinger, to start the season than Anthony Richardson is.
Yeah.
Unless there's something about Richardson that I don't know, which I'm not. I guess maybe there is because I'm not the coach of the.
Yeah, on paper, Houston and Indy have almost the exact same situation though. It's the high draft pick from this season with more experienced backup quarterbacks getting paid high numbers for a backup. So they're at least thinking about being prepared, but I don't know. For some reason, I
Yeah.
like the Indy quarterback situation less than I like Houston, but Houston was the worst team.
Yeah. Well, you have four. Yeah.
Oh,
You have rookie coaches as well in both
yeah.
Houston and Indianapolis. I guess you have Shane Steichen in Indy, DeMeco Ryans in Houston. Ryans was a defensive guy.
Mm,
Steichen at least is offensive. Maybe he thinks he knows better, but like yeah, and maybe it's ownership that's pushing the. And maybe
yeah.
they can probably push around a rookie coach more easily than a veteran coach. And the Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, is insane, as he proved last year when he fired Frank Reich and put in Jeff Saturday for some reason, because he was a drinking golfing buddy of Jim Irsay. And
Yeah.
so I guess that's probably why. But I don't know if like you have throwing the young quarterback in sells tickets if the team's going to be terrible with the young quarterback rather than like
Yeah.
bringing them in kind of slowly. I don't. It just. But I think Stroud, you can say, well, he was an experienced starter for multiple seasons, and he's not just like a project physical tool guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Maybe Richardson has a longer term upside, but yeah, this season doesn't seem like that would be wise to have him to rely on him to be the number one guy. He did start the most recent preseason game, 7 of 12, 67 yards, and an interception, no touchdowns. He did carry the ball twice for 7 yards. Nothing terribly impressive. Gardner
yeah,
Minshew, however, went 6 for 6, 72 yards.
yeah, because he's a professional quarterback, and it's
I'm
also
playing
somebody.
against a second string defense though too.
Yeah, but still, he
It should
played.
he should have decent numbers.
He has had decent numbers in the NFL against first string defenses also. So, but I also think maybe having a running quarterback, somebody who might stick his neck out in the wrong situation and get injured more easily than a pocket passer might. I don't know.
You
I
probably
don't
don't want that. Yeah.
I don't like the Richard. I like Richardson as a potential long-term quarterback. I don't like him starting this early.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what we both say next week when we predict our win totals for each team. We'll see.
Yeah.
We have more expectation for as a team in Houston and Indy. I bet it's going to be close.
Yeah, I think those two, Houston and Indy are definitely in the race for fourth place in the division, and the next two teams, Jacksonville and Tennessee, are the ones racing for first place, because I don't see how either the Colts or the Texans, barring some crazy injury to Trevor Lawrence or Ryan Tannehill, or maybe multiple quarterbacks on Tennessee, would finish. I don't see how Jacksonville or Tennessee would finish behind Houston or Indianapolis.
Yeah.
But Jacksonville, speaking of quarterbacks who started from the very beginning, Jacksonville took Trevor Lawrence, although when Trevor Lawrence was drafted number 1 overall in 2021, he was a very polished and lauded quarterback in college, 34-2 as a starter at Clemson, 90 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 18 rushing touchdowns. He's 6'6". He's got the blonde Adonis kind of hair. He started very soon, even into his freshman year at Clemson. He's been 12-22 at Jacksonville. He's been much better under Doug Peterson than he was under first-year coach Urban Meyer, who was a disaster. But last year, 4,113 passing yards for Lawrence, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 95.2 quarterback rating, a 1-1 playoff record where they lost to Mahomes and the Chiefs. So things are really looking up, I think, in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence. Other than maybe the fact that Lawrence was a spokesman for FTX crypto currency, and he's currently being sued as part of a class action suit against the FTX corporation. But other than that, things are looking pretty good, I think, for Trevor Lawrence. Why would somebody take investment advice from like a 23-year-old, 22-year-old kid anyway? But
won't that be what they say in their defense of the lawsuit?
I guess
I think it's weird that they sue the celebrity spokesperson for a thing anyway, though. That seems strange.
Maybe he had some sort of ownership in the group or
Yeah.
something. I'm not sure. I didn't read that closely because my guys
The
glaze
FTX thing is
over when I
mostly
see the FTX
Sam
stories.
Bankman-Fried's problem. Then I
Yeah.
don't know if there's anybody else really involved. But anyway,
Well, Lawrence,
but it is a common thing. Like a lot of other spokespeople for cryptocurrencies that are being sued all over the place for
Tom Brady, and yeah.
I think it's strange that they're going after the face of it rather than the heart of it.
Well, a couple of years ago, a lot of the NFL players wanted to take some of their salary in crypto, and that hasn't panned out.
The team should have been, telling them, well, we don't want to do that, but
it would have been better to do it the opposite way, just take it in gold, because at least there's something real there. I like the gold bugs a little better than I like the crypto bros in terms of their paranoia and craziness. I think because at least we as a society we will value gold rather than some ethereal thing that can be taken away if our computer malfunctions.
You just lose.
I guess that can happen with our bank accounts too, or whatever. But it's a At least there's real money, and it's insured by the FDIC, and it's all these things that are helpful for us. But I tend to think of, when I talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars backup quarterback CJ Beathard from Iowa, when I think of that kind of craziness, I think of former Chiefs 5th round draft pick from about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago now, Ricky Stanzi from Iowa, who was a kind of right-wing blowhard as a young quarterback, and didn't pan out in the NFL. But CJ Beathard has stuck around a little bit longer, but he's 29. He's 29 now. A 2017 third-round pick from Iowa by San Francisco.
Gross.
With Jacksonville since 2021, a 2-year starter at Iowa. His best season was his 2015 junior year, when Iowa was undefeated but lost to Michigan State in the Big Ten championship, and then lost in the Rose Bowl to Stanford, who also was quarterback at that point by a 5th round future Kansas City draft pick, Kevin Hogan. Do you remember Kevin Hogan? Short-lived career of Kevin Hogan. He actually started a game last year, I believe, or recently, for Tennessee. He played for Tennessee and Cleveland, but he was supplanted by Tyler Bray as the third quarterback in Tennessee before Mahomes arrived. That was when Nick Foles and Alex Smith were the top 2 quarterbacks, and then Tyler Bray beat out Hogan. But CJ Beathard has started 12 games. They were all for San Francisco from 2017 through 2020, replacing injured starters Jimmy Garoppolo. Only 2-10 as a starter. Nick Mullins, we mentioned last week, did much better than Beathard, even though Mullins was the undrafted guy. But Beathard has managed to stick around, even though he's hasn't been so great as a starter. But more touchdowns than interceptions, 18 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, 80.3 passer rating. So it seems like he's probably the backup, although the number 3 quarterback in Jacksonville is a very interesting prospect, I think. One of the most interesting in the whole league. And this is Nathan Rourke, 25. He's a Canadian player from Victoria, British Columbia. He was a 2nd-round CFL pick in 2020 by the British Columbia Lions. But he actually played at Fort Scott Community College in Kansas, and then Ohio University under Frank Solich, who was the former Nebraska coach, who has been solid as Ohio University's coach for the last almost 20 years now. He was a dual threat quarterback at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, which is only about 3 hours down the road here. There's actually a Taco John's in Athens, Ohio, that I like to go to sometimes. It's the closest Taco John's to Frostburg, Maryland. And
you go there every Wednesday.
I wish Taco Tuesday I could go, but Taco John's doesn't own the copyright to Taco Tuesday anymore. Did you see that? They had to relinquish it, or they did relinquish it because Taco Bell was suing them.
And LeBron didn't get it?
No, it's because Taco John's owned it. Taco John's is my favorite of the Mexican fast food establishments. I like the potato olays, but
I love those
so
potato.
I don't know if but I don't know if Nathan Rourke was a fan of Taco John's or not, but hopefully he was. But he averaged over 100 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions over 3 seasons as a starter. Also averaged about 900 yards rushing and 16 rushing touchdowns each year as a starter. So, and he has 3 bowl victories under his belt: the Bahamas Bowl, the Frisco Bowl. Do you know what state the Frisco Bowl is contested?
I'm gonna guess it's not in California with San Francisco, which is not Frisco, Texas.
It is Frisco, Texas. Yes,
Okay.
a suburb of Dallas. But yeah, you're not supposed to call San Francisco Frisco. They don't like it there apparently. But yeah, Frisco, Texas.
Well, I mean, it isn't. You'd have to just sort of glide over some of the letters anyway, or put them
It's an
together.
abbreviation if you write it real fast.
Yeah.
But Frisco, Texas, that's where the FC Dallas has its home games. The Frisco Bowl is played at that soccer stadium, as is the FCS championship game now is played in Frisco, Texas. But the other bowl that he won was the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. So anyway, he was the starting quarterback for the BC Lions last year. 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,300 plus yards. He won the award for the best Canadian player in the CFL last year, almost the MVP of everybody, but he was the best Canadian player. He actually worked out for 12 NFL teams this offseason, including the Kansas City Chiefs, before choosing Jacksonville. And his younger brother, Curtis, with a K, is the current Ohio quarterback starter. So I think Nathan Rourke is an interesting prospect because he was a solid CFL player, and he had this kind of pick of what team he could play for. He decided to go to Jacksonville. I like him again, also because I think CJ Beathard's not very good. So I think Rourke could become an interesting project.
When their most recent preseason game, Beathard and Rourke took all of the snaps, it looks like. And it looks like we'll see who actually started. Beathard started. Yeah. And then salary wise, Lawrence is at 10 million for this year, which is 9th highest of the AFC QBs.
Mm-hmm.
Beathard 2.1 million, Rourke 750K.
I'm reading an article right now. There's no competition at backup quarterback, but it says statistically, Rourke has outperformed Beathard and most every other NFL quarterback this season. It's been a strong set of 2 games for the CFL's 2022 Most Outstanding Canadian, who's already made more than one highlight-worthy play, reminiscent of Texas A&M's Johnny Manziel at times, which isn't probably a good comparison given what happened with Johnny Manziel. But Rourke has been in his first 2 appearances, he's been 19 of 29 for 274 yards. He's also passed for some touchdowns and run for 34 yards and a touchdown. So he's I think Rourke has a lot more upside than Beathard. And
yeah, their numbers are really similar in the most recent preseason game. I mean, Rourke, I guess, slightly outplayed Beathard. Beathard was 12 of 20, 138 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Rourke was 10 of 12, 121 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So slightly higher rating, but not enough really numbers to mean anything though. So
but I'm going to go with your anti-Iowa bias and root against CJ Beathard. And
yeah, that's fine.
Or Nathan Rourke, who played at Fort Scott Community College, just down 69 highway, right? Between here and the Oklahoma border, between Kansas City and the Oklahoma border. And I'm actually going to mention Fort Scott maybe later if I remember correctly, but we'll come back to that.
Fort Scott's going to come up again.
Well, it'll come up again in relation to a former Kansas City area player in Miami, Skylar Thompson, who went to Fort Osage High School.
Oh.
And Fort Osage apparently was replaced by Fort Scott at some point as a frontier outpost.
Oh,
So I was reading about that earlier. Anyway,
nice.
but you want to talk about the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, let's do it.
The fourth team in the AFC South, alphabetically, but wanting to be the first place team in the standings, finished second last year to the Jaguars, largely because their starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill was hurt. He's been a very solid quarterback for them. He's 35 years old. He is a former 2012 first-round pick, number 8 overall by Miami, from Texas A&M. He was 6'4", 34 Wonderlic, 4.58 40-yard dash. So a lot of physical tools, smart-ish at least guy. He started at quarterback only 1 full year at Texas A&M, but played wide receiver for the Aggies for 2.5 years before he became the starting quarterback. So he's a wide receiver converted to quarterback. He spent parts of 7 seasons in Miami. He started all but one of those years, was injured in 2017. 42 and 46 as a starter in Miami, but 36 and 19 in Tennessee, including a season in 2019 where he had 117.5 passer rating to lead the league when he replaced Marcus Mariota as the starter. And the Titans would go all the way to the AFC Championship game that year, losing to the Chiefs. He was injured last year, but with Tennessee, overall, he's been very good. 89 touchdowns, 33 picks, 100.5 quarterback rating, a 2-3 playoff record. Those 2 wins came in the year when they got to the AFC Championship. But the Titans were the number 1 seed in the AFC 2 years ago. So Tannehill, if he's healthy-ish, I think can lead I think the Titans are an overlooked team in terms of the playoff race, especially now they have DeAndre Hopkins. They have a receiver, top line receiver, and a solid defense. Derrick Henry, of course, as a running back. I think they're co-favorites, at least in their division with Jacksonville. I think it's really just a 2-horse race, but I think Tannehill's a pretty good quarterback if he's able to stay healthy and able to avoid the ravages of Father Time.
And Derrick Henry performs.
And Derrick Henry, if Henry performs,
it's kind of a big deal because they're a run-heavy team. So,
and the play action, and yeah. But the Titans do have 2 backup quarterbacks that maybe are the future at quarterback. One who was brought in this year, one who was brought in last year. That is probably the second quarterback on the depth chart is this year's draft pick, Will Levis, who's 24, second-round draft pick, number 33 overall, so the first pick in the second round. He played at Kentucky. He actually started at Penn State, where he was the backup to Sean Clifford for a while, who is the number 3 quarterback now, it seems like, in Green Bay, in the worst of the quarterback situations. But in 2 years as a starter at Kentucky, he had almost 6,000 yards passing, 46 touchdowns, but 25 interceptions, 65% completion rate. So he pretty good. He was 6'4". He actually graduated from Penn State before he went to Kentucky. So maybe a smart guy he had a finance degree. He actually, I learned this about him today. He loves mayonnaise the way that Patrick Mahomes loves ketchup. He signed recently a, quote, lifetime contract with Hellmann's. And apparently it became clear that he puts mayonnaise in his coffee in the morning. I think that's so I don't like ketchup very much either. I'm a barbecue sauce person, being from Kansas City, I think. But I think I like mayonnaise less than ketchup. But I don't really care for either of those condiments. But
mayonnaise in coffee seems like that's like the most disgusting thing anyone's ever said.
Yeah. But it's what Will Levis enjoys. And there's one other rookie in the NFL with a condiment deal right now, and that is Bijan Robinson, who markets his own brand of mustard called Bijan Mustardson. I guess Bijan, the play on Dijon, and then Mustardson instead of Robinson. So
nice.
You can find out. We can get some Will Levis branded Hellmann's mayonnaise. Oh, Hellmann's. Do you know what it's called? You know what Hellmann's is called? It's only called Hellmann's, I think, in the eastern half of the United States, or at least in the Pacific time zone. It's called something different. It's called Best mayonnaise. It's not called
No.
mayonnaise. And so the slogan when they say "Bring out the Hellmann's, bring out the best" is an homage to the best mayonnaise brand that they have in California. So like in California, at least maybe they do now. It's
Which doesn't mean that it's good. It's just called best.
It's just called best. Yeah. Well, any mayonnaise is give me the best mayonnaise and still be terrible. But
Like, is it like the Great American Ballpark is not actually,
yeah.
it's just because it's an insurance company
Yeah.
called Great American Insurance.
Yes. Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking up Hellmann's right now on Wikipedia just to
Do they give it a clever name though to go along with the
it's called Best Foods. Yeah. So yeah,
the Will Levis though? Is that not? They didn't come.
I think he's just a helmet. Like Mahomes is part of the Hunt's ketchup line now.
Yeah.
He's a spokesman for that. Will Levis is for Hellmann's. Yeah, Best Foods. Yeah, Hellmann's brand is sold east of the Rocky Mountains, Latin America, Europe, and Australia, the Middle East, Canada, India, and Pakistan. The Best Foods brand is sold in the United States west of the Rocky Mountains, in East Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand.
Pretty sure it'll spoil if it
And
crosses.
so Richard Hellman is immigrated from Prussia to New York City, where he developed his mayonnaise. I do not know. Oh, I see. So Hellman's mayonnaise thrived on the East Coast by 1927. The California company Postum Foods, later Best Foods. Do you know what Postum is? It was this coffee alternative that was a caffeine-free alternative that was made from like charred like wheat or something, and it had a coffee-like flavor, and like kids could drink it, and people drank Postum a lot. Postum. Anyway, the Postum company became Best Foods, introduced their own mayonnaise, and then Postum, aka Best, bought Hellmann's, allowing Hellman to retire, but they kept the name Best in the West and Hellmann's in the East, I guess. So yeah. Anyway, that's but anyway, that's Will Levis. Right now, Will Levis is possibly injured. We don't really know what it is. He has a quote lower body injury, but it's supposedly not too serious. So, but it seems like he'll be ready to be the backup quarterback at the beginning of the season, because it seems like he has passed Will. So Will Levis is 24. He's also passed Malik Willis, who was drafted last year. He's 1 month older than Levis. 3rd round pick in 2022 from Liberty. Jerry Falwell's institution. He began at Auburn, a 32 on the Wonderlic for Malik Willis, so not too shabby. 17-6 record at Liberty over 2 years, 5,000 yards passing, 47 touchdowns, 18 interceptions over those 2 years. Also about 2,000 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns over those 2 years. So dual threat quarterback. He started 3 games last year when Tannehill got hurt, but he didn't have a great rookie season, and this seems to be maybe why he has been pushed down on the depth chart and Will Levis was brought in. He only had a 40.8 passer rating in those 3 games, 3 interceptions, 31 of 61 for 276 yards, but he did have 1 rushing touchdown, but a 1-2 record. So he's probably the odd man out in terms of at Tennessee, but still on the roster and still maybe some potential down the road as a developmental quarterback. But that's the Tennessee Titans. And do you have any Titan commentary, or should we wrap up the AFC South in this segment of our?
Just really quick, I guess. Yeah, Tannehill's at $36.6 million for this year, number 2 paid quarterback in the AFC. Levis is at $1.7 million for this season. Malik Willis at 1.2. Did look like in the most recent preseason game, Malik Willis played the entirety of the game and was barely did anything though. It was 10 of 17 for 85 yards.
Yeah, it's maybe because, well, you don't want to risk Tannehill and maybe Levis is hurt, so we're just going to put Willis out there. And
yeah, but also not make him do a whole lot though either. So that's just kind of strange that they didn't like try to do too much, at least anyway. They won 24-16 against Minnesota, so I guess maybe they weren't worried about it. They could get enough done on the ground, so it didn't really matter. But he did rush for 91 yards on 11 carries, so that's where they kept it going anyway.
Yeah, so he has that rushing element that Tennessee's a running team anyway, so maybe you want a running quarterback at some point. But right now it's Tannehill, I think, and I think if Tannehill's healthy, I think the Titans can be a solid team, especially in the AFC South, which only has 2 teams that are trying to win probably this year. But that wraps up half of our AFC quarterback preview, and so that wraps up part 2 of this week's episodes of the Warning Track Power Hour. We'll be back right now, very shortly, for part 3. So you can find that right now, or you can wait and listen to it or watch it whenever you feel like. But we'll be back with part 3 with the AFC North and AFC East quarterback situations for the 2023 season.